regardless of the industry, whether it's ours or not, people experience something called professional burnout every 5 to 7 years, where you pull up outside of your job and you just sit in your car a little bit longer than you probably should. And you take a couple of deep breaths and you just walk on in there with a smile on your face. And I find that happens a lot to stylists over a long period of time, because we're doing the same people, we're doing the same type of requests. Sometimes it's not different. So I think a class is the best thing to breathe fresh air into your career and kind of get that fire back. So I found that the more experienced stylists usually are very, very excited and hungry. Again, if you approach it in the right manner as an educator, that you're open, and I'm just here to kind of help in many ways.
Today's guest on Brazen and Bold is joining me live from Vegas. We have the inestimable Cole Thompson. He's the founder of Elevation H, which is a global education company helping support salons and onboarding their talent, as well as getting them the education and up to speed training that they need. Also, a former creative director with Vidal Sassoon with world-class experience. Thank you for joining us, Cole Thompson. How are you?
I'm really good. How are you doing?
I'm so happy to have you today. I mean, we've been running in the same circles and rubbing shoulders at different events, and it's just nice to be able to spend a little bit of time connecting with you today on the show. So thank you for being with us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Listen, you came to the US not too long ago, or rather a little bit longer ago than just very, but you came to the US to help in education as a creative director for Vidal Sassoon.
Yeah.
Tell me what your journey was like in hair leading up to that point. What made you decide to take that leap?
Of course. So it was, I certainly didn't grow up wanting to be a hairstylist. It wasn't really on my radar. I wanted to be a soccer player, I think, as every probably British little boy wants to be. Didn't really work out because I wasn't very good. So there was that. And then when you graduate high school at 16, so quite young, and from there you can go on to college or university, or you can get a job, and usually you'll go into some sort of trade. And I just chose hairdressing. I had an auntie who was a hairdresser, and she always seemed to be really happy and smiling all the time and loved the job. So I tried it and just fell in love with it almost instantly. Absolutely loved it. And it kind of went from there. And here I am almost 25 years later and had some unbelievable opportunities. When I decided I wanted to do it properly, then that's when I knew I wanted to work for a reputable company who could teach and train me, which ended up being Vidal Sassoon.
World class. Like I said, that's pretty incredible. When you moved here to work for Vidal, you were the youngest creative director to have ever joined the company. Is that correct?
Yeah. So how it kind of works is each salon or school will have like a creative director and assistant creative director. And when I was in Manchester, I think I was probably maybe 20, 21 or something like that. And I had a really lucky opportunity because we had some people move on and go to different salons and maybe go into different directions. So suddenly, not that I was the only person left. They were like, well, do you want to do it? And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do it. And I was really young, probably a little too young. I jumped into it. And yeah, so I think at the time I was 20, 21 when I became an assistant creative director, and about 22 when I became a creative director, which was pretty wild, really.
It is incredible. And I like how you just sandbagged and said I was the last man standing. They just put me in there.
Pretty much.
And maybe it had something to do with your talent, maybe, or your leadership capacity, but maybe it was just because you were the last one out there. I want to know a little bit more about your auntie, actually. That caught my attention. Is your auntie still around, and is she still a stylist?
She's still a stylist, but unfortunately she passed away probably about 6 months ago. But yeah, she was great. Always to the last days, the most positive person I'd ever met, really. She was great.
I love it. Tell us her name.
Her name was Rachel.
Rachel, she's I like that, she's still a stylist. I think that's beautiful.
Definitely.
When you said that, it resonated. My favorite aunt growing up also was a stylist. I saw her support her family through a divorce, and she actually moved in with us and started doing hair adjacent to our home.
Oh, really?
This was years ago. And that was my first exposure. I was probably 8, 9. I don't know. I was young. And I knew that I wanted to do that ever since I saw her and saw how much fun she had, every day. And she's still with us, and she's still that positive force and one of my favorite people. So I think that's cool that we have that common influence that got us going.
Yeah, that's great.
From those early years, Cole, what was kind of your pinch me moment, or when you knew things were really working for you and that you'd arrived in this field?
I think I was relatively young, and I remember getting a phone call one day to ask if I would go from England to Spain to teach a class in Barcelona. Same type of situation. I would always ask. I think that's, if anyone listening, never be afraid to ask. I would always ask if there's ever an opportunity, if you ever need anybody, and I would do it for free or on my own time. And one day somebody was sick and they didn't have anybody to go and teach like a seminar for 3 or 4 days, and they just called me and said, can you go to Barcelona tomorrow? And I'm like, absolutely I can. And I remember that moment thinking, like going to the airport thinking, I'm getting paid, go to a different country is insane. And it was just from perseverance. And I think, the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, and that's definitely a huge thing in my life and career.
Putting yourself in those moments is what forged the opportunity, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, definitely.
You kept kind of saying, hey, I'm around, I can do this. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a really great one. I mean, listen, if anybody's, I'm just going to put it out there, like Cole says, if anybody needs a class in Barcelona, yo hablo español, estoy feliz a hacerlo, por favor, llámame. Let me know and send me, baby. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't speak any Spanish really at all. I think I do, but I really don't. So that was no idea what you said, but it sounded great.
I just said, for anybody listening, send me to Spain. I'll teach a class. Call me.
Nice.
So if you need a class, put it out there. I really like that. I mean, opportunity comes to people who put themselves in the place to get those opportunities. That's wonderful. And
still to this day, I teach my son that as well. And I think if you don't ask, people won't know. And even that's the same for help. If you need help with something, whether it's a business or a client or something that you're struggling with, people don't know unless you speak up in any area. And I think it's a really, really good lesson to learn.
As an educator, what have you seen be the biggest difference when you see somebody, I'm imagining in a class setting, you see people who probably want to pretend they've got it together, and then people who are like, excuse me, can you help me with this? What do you see being the main difference in those people and the outcomes that they have as the person who asks, not just for the opportunity, but for the help?
I think definitely the people who ask for help always will get the biggest strides. And people who don't necessarily ask for help usually are really good at what they do and confident, which is great. And I think it's kind of a tough question in a way, because everybody takes a class for many different reasons. They might be at different levels of proficiency, or they want to get something out of the class. So I think as an educator, if I'm dealing with a mixed group, kind of identifying what each individual really needs from the experience. And if they've got lots of questions and wanting to spend a lot of time over something, then I'll give them a little bit more. And then maybe some people want to kind of show what they can do and kind of get validated in their level currently. Then I'll give them a little bit less and kind of let them kind of thrive a little bit. Because one thing I certainly heard over the years of a lot of schools, and sometimes we hear educators say, the students get mad at us because we kind of take over the haircut sometimes. And that student needs to be kind of let off the reins a little bit. So it's very, very different. You get such a mixed bag.
That's a great point. And talk to me. I mean, I'm an educator myself. I get to travel teaching for Goldwell. Mm-hmm. Tell me, in your experience, having taught all across the world at this point, how do you adapt your approach to those different audiences? Or how are you tailoring what you're doing and customizing that? Because that can be a really tall ask, especially in a larger group setting.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if it's quite an extensive class, whether it's a full day or a week or something where you're spending a decent amount of time with people. I'll always start every class with an introduction. We'll go around the room and I'll collect information of what they would like to learn. If there's anything they really want to focus on, anything they really feel really strong about, any strengths, weaknesses, anything like that, and kind of gather information. And then I'll just keep it written down to make sure that I hit each request throughout the day or the week or whatever that tends to be. And then when it's a shorter, smaller class, what I will do is I'll ask questions, things like, oh, does anybody dry cut here? Does anybody cut pixies? Does anybody cut extensions or whatever? And kind of collect the information again. And if the hand's not gone up from anything, then I can be like, well, you don't do any clients? Or what are you doing? Like, oh, well, I'm not really confident in it. And then you can start to deep dive in. And it just comes from experience and not even circling back, not being afraid to ask. So even as the educator, I want to ask them, what do you guys need from me at this moment? Because one thing that you'll notice on any class you take, before you know it, the class is done and you're driving or flying home thinking, I wish I'd have asked that.
Okay. I think that's really impactful. What do you think makes, I mean, you've attended classes as well, I'm sure, but do you have a signature thing that you think makes for a great class when you're teaching? Or have you attended a class where you're like, that made that a mic drop moment?
Power of the speaker in a way, or whoever's presenting the class. I think humor is a really, really amazing thing to have, keeping things quite lighthearted. I feel that it's quite hard to learn in a situation where you feel pressure and expectation. So I think humor is really, really good. As an educator, I think almost like making fun of yourself or even using references of times when things haven't gone so good is really, really helpful. And I mean, I like to think I'm a funny guy. Maybe anyone listening might disagree. I think humor is huge. And then also letting them know that you've been through what they've been through at whatever level that is.
What I'm hearing from that is relatability.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially once you're on stage and you've reached this certain place in your career, it'd be really easy for an attendee to think, well, easy for you to say, or I can't imagine you botching a haircut. For you to own something like that might demystify it for people and build a little bit more confidence. And I do think that's a lovely thing. And for anybody listening who teaches their team, has a staff that they train, owning that is actually a really powerful thing.
Of course. And I think I heard something, I can't remember exactly who said it, but it was something about kind of, it's not necessarily about how we feel. I think in a situation where we're working with a group of people, a room of people, it's how do we make them feel, and helping to connect and relatability on any kind of level and trying to find that. And I think being open and honest and even vulnerable is a really, really great way to connect.
Perfect. Connection is everything. It really is. You could be the best artist or artisan in the world and execute the most flawless thing, but if you're not relatable, people don't feel like they can trust you or learn from it. That's really important. Thank you.
Of course.
What inspired you to found Elevation H? Tell us a little bit about Elevation H, how long it's been going on, what you do. Tell me about the program, the outline.
Of course. So how it kind of developed is, I think we may have mentioned it, but I've got an identical twin brother who's based in the UK. So I'm US based, he's UK based. So it's when I was working for Sassoons in Santa Monica, and I had an unbelievable opportunity we would travel all over the place, and we would work with school groups or salon groups. And almost every single time we would end up going for dinner with the owners or the leadership team, and they would ask for things like, okay, this class was amazing. We spent a couple of days with you. We really, really enjoyed it. What can we kind of do to help our team in the meantime? How do we keep the level of, because, we do a class and then we kind of settle back into our ways. We do a class again. So how do we kind of keep that consistency up there a little bit closer to being higher rather than dropping? And I was like, well, we don't really do anything kind of like that. You could come to us and take a class. So it was always those moments of highs of education. And I remember being on the phone to my brother, and he's always owned salons. He's always had a team. He would always bring people in straight from school or give them an apprenticeship. And he was asking me the same thing. He's like, I wish there was something that could kind of help me teach my team better or be consistent and keep the level as high as possible, and even just create consistency. And I was like, well, let's just make something. And that's where the idea kind of came from. And then we decided, okay, we'll do like an online university with lots of support. We can visit and they can visit us, but the in-between would be a very structured training program that can change duration based upon the individual. So it's very, very bespoke. So whether you need a training or apprenticeship program to last 2 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And again, the requirements in each country is a little different, but it can be whatever you want it to be. And then we design you a program, we brand it out for you. So it's your program powered by us. And it sets week by week, day by day classes out where they can come in and do mannequins or live people. And it's overseen by kind of the leadership team there. Or we can oversee it. Depends on how hands-on or hands-off you want to be. So I guess it takes all of the stress off the business owner of educating their team at any level, and we take care of it for them. And everything's tracked. We track everything that they do. We get pictures, we get assignments. It's pretty cool, really. It's all encompassing based upon whatever you need it to be. And like I said, we can be very, very hands-on or very, very hands-off based upon the requirements of the business. So that's kind of where it came from. That's what we do. We've worked with thousands of salons all over the world now. It's really cool.
I love that. How long ago did you found this?
Well, we started Elevation H probably 12 years ago now. And then pre-COVID, it was not quite as digital. We had like a printed books with, worksheets and all that kind of stuff. And then COVID definitely was, unfortunately for a lot of people, was terrible. But in terms of our business and growth was a good thing because it caused us to go very streamlined and digital. So now everything's online. So they just log into one portal, and within inside there has got pages to read, assignments, quizzes, drawing head sheets, videos. And then we also have a teacher's training version. So if anybody wants to learn how to become an educator or learn how to communicate with students, we have a full teacher training version of it as well, which is really cool.
I mean, it really does sound like something for everyone and every business owner. You mentioned the different scalability of what you provide and your involvement. Is this offered at different price points depending on the business need?
To an extent, we're pretty like cut and dry with the pricing. So it's not like a monthly subscription or anything like that. We do offer that for a lot of individuals. But when it comes to the businesses, it's usually like a small joining fee. And what that covers is design of the curriculum based upon the duration. Just we kind of build it out or shrink it down depending on how quick or slow you would like it. Unlimited Zoom calls, kind of something like this, where we can help program to their team, get them excited about it, teacher training, whatever they need. And then basically anything that they need to get from the signing on fee. And then from there, it only costs them money whenever they sign a student up. So we only charge $275 per sign up. So the only time it would cost you as a business owner is that, hey, I've got 2 assistants, sign them up, $275, and then they go through the program. One thing that we introduced a couple of years ago is, let's say, for example, because it happens, you sign somebody up and it just doesn't work out. Then maybe they're not a good fit, or they decide to leave, or whatever. If the student is 75% or below of completion, you get 100% credit for the next person you sign up. So it doesn't keep costing you money if it doesn't quite work out, which can sometimes, some business owners can be a little reluctant. If you're a little on the fence about somebody, we've kind of covered all that as well.
I think that's brilliant. And I think especially in the current hiring environment, there's a lot of people who are reticent to invest in somebody when they're like, especially in our industry where the turnover can be quite high, especially within the first year. It can be really hard to invest in somebody and then realize they're out. And people might be reticent to do that. And they're missing the opportunity to potentially nurture a really valid team member, and that person winds up not feeling like they're getting supported in their growth. So what you're offering is something that's almost, it removes a significant amount of the risk. That's cool. Yeah. I like that concept. I like that idea.
Yeah, because they might just need a little hug, and a little support and a little loving, and suddenly you've got a rock star on your hands. So yeah, we kind of account for all of that.
When you're looking at salons, having taught thousands across the country, what are your thoughts on structure within education, but just within the salon itself? And why does that matter to a salon's growth? Why does that matter to the team?
For sure. And every business is a little different depending on, which direction you kind of want to go with it. But just, I think from over the years of seeing very, very successful businesses, they all have one consistent thing, and it's consistency. Consistency from day one. This is how we do things here. And it's not necessarily to grow like robots and we don't have a personality, because I think that's what our industry is built on. But how do we make sure that there's a level of consistency from how we answer the phone, how we do a shampoo, a towel wrap, presenting a coffee, the level of standard with technical ability. And if you look at all of the old institutions in our industry, from Sassoon, Aveda, Paul Mitchell's, or, huge companies, they would always have that. They'd have a training program before you get on the floor, just to make sure that we're at the level that you would like them to be. And I think that works both ways. It's really, really good for the business, but it's also good for the individual, because they know their expectations and they know that they're being supported to reach that level. And if it's not a good fit, then that's fine. But at least you're not just thrown in the deep end, like, go get him, champ, and then you're like, what?
Yeah. It's really nice. That consistency provides support. That structure is really valuable when it comes to growing a team. And what we're seeing too, I think a lot in hiring, at least what I'm experiencing and what I'm seeing in the trends in the different people I've spoken to in the industry, people really want a career path. They want to know about growth. They want to know where they can go and not feel like there's a ceiling or a cap to what they can produce in a team environment. And it sounds like providing this type of support and education is a really great structure. It gives a lot to the owner and also their new hires and people who want to join their team. It's a great selling point to have that kind of structure and roadmap. When you're working with stylists, maybe you've got the assistant and the apprentice program dialed in. When you're working with stylists, what do you think is, because you also teach for Hanzo, to write Hanzo shares, and you have some exposure to that platform as well. When you're dealing with people with more experience, what do you think is the biggest barrier or the biggest thing that's overlooked when someone is trying to level up in their technical skill and in their career?
That's a great question. And yeah, I travel almost every single weekend of the year working with Hattori Hanzo, great company. And a lot of the time we're working with established salons, with established stylists. And again, it's a very, very mixed bag. I find that from my experience, definitely, usually the more experienced the stylists are, I think if you are open and vulnerable and kind of funny a little bit as well, they let the guard down and they really, really want to learn. Because one thing that I've found is regardless of the industry, whether it's ours or not, people experience something called professional burnout every 5 to 7 years, where you pull up outside of your job and you just sit in your car a little bit longer than you probably should. And you take a couple of deep breaths and you just walk on in there with a smile on your face. And I find that happens a lot to stylists over a long period of time, because we're doing the same people, we're doing the same type of requests. Sometimes it's not different. So I think a class is the best thing to breathe fresh air into your career and kind of get that fire back. So I found that the more experienced stylists usually are very, very excited and hungry. Again, if you approach it in the right manner as an educator, that you're open and I'm just here to kind of help in many ways. So I hope that answered the question.
That does help. I mean, keeping open to education. I think those people who've been in the industry the longest, that are the most open to growth are light years ahead of somebody who's been in the industry forever with a robust clientele, but not a lot of passion any longer. It's kind of like time to hang up those shears, cowboy, and walk away. But someone who's still hungry and excited, that's a lot. Because I mean, I've even experienced this with educators. I remember growing up, one of my teachers in high school just didn't seem to be really happy with what they were doing. And I remember thinking maybe it was time for you to be done teaching a few years ago. If you're done feeling excited or energized about that. So you've been in this profession for over 20 years at this point. And what do you find keeps you the most excited or inspired after 20 plus years?
Being around just great people, and not necessarily even just great hairstylists, just really good people with the right morals and good hearts, and I guess like-minded. So all of the people that I work with now are all my best friends, and they weren't my best friends until I met them, through work. All my friends are really good dads and really friendly, and they work really hard. That for me is because every time I go out to work in any capacity, whether it's for Elevation H or Hattori Hanzo or any other company, it's either my company, my brother's company, which of course we want to work hard and do the right thing, but also I'm representing people that I love and don't want to ever let down. And so I think surround yourself with amazing people is my biggest piece of advice for anybody. And again, don't be afraid to ask those people for help. And all of them are much better than me in different areas of life, not even just a profession, right? So I think that's really helpful as well.
That's great. How do you vet people? You're saying find the right people. What's the application process to be your friend? In case somebody's listening and they want to know, we're gonna leave a link in the show notes of where people can find you, your education, follow your company. So someone's like, hey, I'd like to know how to be considered as a friend of Cole because he seems pretty cool. How do you find yourself bringing these types of people into your life?
I think it definitely happens. I think it's being open to listening, and all the right people have just found their way into my life, and all the wrong people just eventually have left. But being open and listening to that. How you can find me if you want to become friends, you can. Social media is probably the easiest way. My Instagram is just _Cole_Thompson, and give me a follow, shoot me a message if you've ever got any questions about haircutting or where you can find a class or the in-salon training programs, whatever that is. You can always reach out, and then our website's elevationh.com.
All right, that's lovely. I mean, like I said, we'll be putting all this in the show notes, but someone might be like, I want people who align more with my values. When you mentioned like they're good dads, they're showing up, they're thoughtful in other areas of their life. Someone can be an amazing artist, or they can be really good as a business owner, but they might not be somebody you want to share a meal with over the weekend. And especially spending so much time in work or on the road, it sounds like it's a really high value of yours to find people who are staying in that higher level of performance in every area of their life. That says a lot too, about how you operate in general. And that's good for all of us to hear, like keeping that clean, keeping it mindful, what we want. And we all have different priorities. And I respect that so many of us are different in that way, but finding people who are going to support your path and you staying on track to your growth is really nice.
Yeah, they definitely helped me on that side of things as well, to kind of a standard, which is necessary.
I like that. Cool. How do you help stylists and salon owners and students that you work with find their voice, find their unique approach, or find what works for them?
Confidence. One of my good friends, his name's DJ Muldoon, probably one of the greatest educators on the planet. And he always says knowledge destroys fear. So that's confidence. If you know what you want to do and why you want to do it, you can execute it and not be worried about it. I always think about this, but I think one of the worst feelings as a hairstylist is when, let's say the client loves their hair, but they leave, you just don't like it. Or you're kind of at dinner thinking about a pixie you cut last Tuesday. It's one of the worst, it's the worst feeling in the world. And I think that comes from the unknown of, did I do the right thing? Did my client particularly like that? So knowledge destroys fear is the best thing, and it's confidence. And you gain confidence by doing it over and over and over and over again, working out the kinks. And that's my biggest piece of advice in terms of that aspect.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your teaching philosophy, how you approach your work as an educator in your different environments that you find yourself in.
Sure. Because I come from a very, very technical background, which is absolutely great. But I definitely struggled with it earlier on in my career, because again, I was not naturally gifted with my hands. I don't necessarily just feel haircuts. I'm not very visual. I'm more of a spreadsheet kind of guy, right?
This is not a compelling sales pitch for you to be cutting hair, but you've really figured it out. And this is actually very empowering. So how'd you figure that out to move into philosophy?
So I feel that the way that we teach and the way that we break things down has to be easy, simple, usable, and you can recreate it. Where we really dialed in is we work on communication between client and stylist, because I think one of the missing gaps, especially when we graduate, we've been taught by experts to become experts, but we have our own language. So if I said to a client, would you like me to graduate your hair or layer your hair? They might not necessarily know what you mean. We know what we mean most of the time, but they don't. So we work on communication, how we deliver and present information to clients to get the best results. So we work very visual in terms of our techniques. So for example, if I said, I want to graduate your hair, how we'd break it down is, would you like more volume in your hair? A client's going to know the difference, right? So we kind of break it down much more like that. And I think it all goes down to communication. I think if hairstylists are struggling, they're just struggling to communicate with their clients more than anything. And how do I decide on, well, do I do this technique or this? What do I do? And that's what I found that we're really, really good at. We're not good at everything, but we're really, really good at simplifying the technical side of hair cutting and coloring.
Demystifying that and then breaking it down to remove technical jargon, bridging the gap between stylist speak and what the client actually wants is probably, I mean, you can do mediocre hair, and if you can dial in that communication piece, you can build a clientele pretty quick. That'll do more for you than having excellent hands and knowing exactly how to feel the hair and just visually see what's happening. Because you can be the greatest artist in the world, and if you're not communicating with your subject how they want their painting or their art to finish, the finished piece to look, doesn't matter how beautiful you did if it's not what they wanted because you didn't communicate well. That's
absolutely great. And it's so true, because mainly the people that we work with are salon owners who want us to help their employees get better and more comfortable and confident, which equals profitability as well. So if we can get them to be able to, and they're working behind the chair, it's not like they're doing seminars and they're working behind the chair, they're doing a beautiful clientele every single day. So that's what we teach. We teach them, how do we grow a clientele by doing beautiful hair and being really comfortable and confident and making sure that the client has a phenomenal experience.
This is very pragmatic. And I appreciate this, because there are some educators who, like, I do like flair. The inspiration is fun when somebody's, pulling a Mozart and cutting hair upside down and making some sort of flair happen. At the same time, I'm never going to do that at the salon.
Right.
So it sounds really like you're making this just all very accessible, very pragmatic, very replicatable. And that does translate to a solid, replicatable career.
Yeah.
I like
that. Thank you.
Listen, so you didn't mention in the beginning until just recently that you've got an identical twin brother who also does hair and owns salons. Who's better at hair and who did it first?
It's really, I did it first. So I started at 16, became like an apprentice just in a local salon close to where we lived. And then about 6 months later, I remember one day, because we still lived at home at the time, my mum used to make me a packed lunch to go to, I was going to say school, but to work with. And I left it at home one day. So I called home and my brother brought it in for me. And we were really busy that day. And I said, Paul, can you just sweep up and help make this lady a cup of tea? So he did. And he just stayed. And he came back the next day. And the next day, and he's like, this is amazing.
You never blew away after that? He
just kept showing up. So then we just worked together, and it was kind of great. So he's an amazing hairstylist. Because Paul's salon based. I've not been salon based for quite a long time now. So Paul is amazing behind the chair, and he's Paul's my favorite person in the world, minus my son. Should I say that? But
hold on, Cole. Pause. Do you have a partner?
No.
Okay, good, because I was like, we can edit this out and we can save you. But if you have a partner, you cannot be saying this on camera. You're screwed. I'm just trying to watch out for you, man.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate that.
It's like, oh dear. Okay. Your son, number one.
Yeah, and then Paul.
Your priorities are great. If you have a dog, I hope that's number 3.
Yeah, no dog. And my point of that is, in terms of like being a hairstylist, I think Paul encompasses the whole thing. So again, being technical and cutting hair and all of that, I've had a really good background. So it's just what I do. I've done it for a long time. Paul has been behind the chair, and in terms of making a client feel amazing in that chair, he's amazing at it. That's my favorite thing about him. Whenever I go back home for Christmas, he opens up the back of his car and just chocolate boxes fall out and bottles of wine, because all of the little old ladies that love him bring all the gifts in. So I think that's a really key piece of thing to think about. It's not necessarily what type of hair you do, it's how do you make people feel when they're in your presence, and then in your chair is the biggest thing.
And that has, I mean, just take a second there because I think you hit on something so powerful and beautiful here, Cole. Forget what industry you're in. Forget what you do or don't do for work. How you make people feel when they're around you, whether it's in your chair, in your business, on your front porch talking to you, how you make someone feel in your presence is so much more valuable than anything you deliver professionally. And I think that'll be my favorite thing you said today, just so you know.
I just got goosies then. That's great.
Let's have a moment, everybody. Yeah, but it's true. It really is true. And I think at the end of the day, you can do amazing hair. I have a current fixation with the eventual demise of all of us. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much Marcus Aurelius, but really it's true. Marcus is my current lover. I am seeing him very seriously. We talk every day a lot. But I think at the end of everything, when it's all said and done, hooray for every haircut you did. Great that you talked to thousands of salons and taught. Doesn't matter. What really matters is the way you made the people that were around you feel. And if you can dial that in, you have success no matter what your career looks like.
It's so true. And whichever direction you go in, that's the key.
The fact that you get that is likely a huge component of your success. Might also be, for those of you who are listening and can't see it, probably partially his dashing good looks. But here's the best thing. I'm just seeing these two 16-year-old boys and one fetching your sack lunch and running it into and being like, okay, so I'm over here, whatever he was doing at the time. He's shelving boxes at some store, right? He's over here and then he like shows up and he's like, so Cole is hanging out with all of these hot chicks and okay, I can see why he'd show back up again the next day. He's like, what else can I sweep? Is there anything else you need me to take care of? That's pretty awesome. Did he apprentice right away? Did he go to a different school?
No, we worked together. So my boss, when my brother walked in, he just saw like dollar signs. He's like, wait a minute, identical twins, I'm hiring you. So he just made us walk around together all the time and people loved it. But it's funny because back then, and this is a long time ago, you could smoke in salons back then.
Excellent.
Which was wild. So you walked in, it looked like a coffee bar in like France somewhere. So everyone just sat smoking, drinking cappuccinos, there's music playing. And he's like, what the hell is going on in here? I'm like, it's a hair salon. And he's like, I'm staying.
That's actually so cute. I freaking love it. I love it. There was no cigarettes in public where I grew up. I feel like I've been really deprived. Either that or my lungs are better off. I can't tell yet, but I'll never know what I missed out on, it sounds like.
It's pretty wild. I'm very dangerous as well because bleach is extremely flammable. So ridiculous. Yeah.
My brother-in-law tells a story of his best friend's mom cutting his hair, and she would hold her iced tea and her cigarette and cut his hair. I'm like, that's talent. At the same time, and I'm like, this is such a vision of like a 1980s, I don't know, setup. It's amazing. I love it. So for the last few minutes we have together, I just want to ask you a couple random questions and you can be like, this is the stupidest thing ever. And that's okay. I'm still going to ask you. I want to know, what is the most British thing about you? You've been here in the States for how many years now?
13 years now.
Okay. What's the most British thing about you?
I'm absolutely obsessed with James Bond.
Oh, am I British too?
Maybe. I don't know if that makes me British, but I love James Bond.
You're obsessed with James Bond. Okay, awesome. And what is the thing that you miss most about home?
My mom and my brothers and my dad.
Why don't you go back? I mean, I'm like kind of heartbroken. There was a little bit of my heart out. That's amazing. You get to go home and see them often, I hope.
Yeah, I'm very lucky like that. With working with Paul, we do a lot of conventions together. So he usually comes to the US 3-4 times a year. And then my parents come here once a year, and then I'll go there at least once, twice a year. So every few months we're seeing each other. So it's not too bad. And things like this, FaceTime, Zoom, whatever, that's very, very helpful.
Yeah. But it sounds like a big portion of your heart is still there, which is really difficult. What is your favorite city to teach in?
Great question. I got a few favorite cities. US, I love Boston. That was the first city that I moved to, but I like Charleston. I don't know if it's North or South Carolina, but it's absolutely spectacular.
Can I tell you what it is? Because this is how I do it. Carolina. It's in Carolina, not sure which one. Okay.
No,
so Charleston, Carolina.
They're my favorites in the US. And then anywhere has been Seoul, Korea. I loved going to Korea. I was very lucky to go there quite a few times, and it's great.
What did you love about it?
It's just so different. I think being in Asia makes you realize that you're not, because when I go to Europe or I'm in America, there's a lot of similarities, but whenever I've been to Asia, it makes you realize this. It's almost like you're on a different planet. Everything's so different, from the food, language, everything about it. But they were just so hungry to learn. One of my favorite things, I remember myself and my colleague, an amazing haircutter called Tracy Sakositz. She ran Sassoon for a long time. We landed, and when people wait for you in the welcoming area, they had like, when soccer teams like show up and they got like the banners, they had like these banners with our names and our faces on it. And like, what the hell is going on? And so that was just like, this is
stardom of that footballer that you were always hoping for, Cole. Like, it finally happened as a stylist.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, but they were just so hungry to learn, and they just hung on everything that you said, and they were in there and they were watching, and they were so close, and they loved every single second of the class that we were doing. There was no kind of like no nervousness, no like, oh, I better not ask him this. They just dove in head first, and the city was just absolutely incredible, from the food to the architecture, everything.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. And before we wrap up, I'd love to know, what's the most impactful book or thing that you've read recently that you think our listeners would enjoy?
Great question. I read a book, and it changed my life forever. I think because from transitioning from being an educator or a hairstylist to then owning a business and trying to run a business, I mean, even as a hairstylist behind the chair, we sell all day long, our haircuts, our recommendations. So Sell or Be Sold by a guy called Grant Cardone is, if you're a business owner or want to just grow and make more money or be more confident, is one of the most life-changing books I've ever read.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned where people can find you. Is there a special offer you want to throw out there for our Brazen and Bold listeners if they want to engage with you and work with Elevation H?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, if any salons out there need some help or with structure or growth and consistency with their team, we have the Salon Associate Program. So we always do a joining fee. We'll do a discount on any joining fee from anybody who comes over from you guys.
Excellent. Just make sure that you mention it. We'll include the links for how that works in our show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for your generosity and spending time today, sharing some of your light, your passion for what you do, and also the clarity that you provide in how to break down into systematic structure this program and format of teaching and learning and growing a consistent clientele. Thank you so much for spending the better part of your morning with me today, Cole.
Thank you. And we love everything you've got going on over there as well. So we appreciate you.
Cool. Thank you.